So I am going to go ahead actually and call this meeting to order. We are still able to hold a Zoom meeting. Whoops, let's see here. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:01. This is the Open Space Committee, and we are still able to hold a Zoom meeting, I think, for about another week. I think at that point, we're going to have to start going into public spaces. At least that's my understanding. Let's see here. Present, myself, Cindy Palmer, April West, Diana Fetterman, Charlie McDonald, and Janet Brown. And maybe others will join us, but we do have a quorum at this point. Are there any members of the public present? I don't see any. However, if members join us and they want to make a comment, we can welcome that. I am going to suggest that somebody make a motion to defer the review of the minutes from the previous meeting to the next meeting. Does anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make it.
Okay, so a motion and a second. All right, a motion has been made and seconded to pass over the review of the minutes for the May meeting and put those on for perhaps the June agenda. Excuse me, the July agenda. So as far as committee reports go, I'd like to just have people make a report of anything of interest. We won't go through everyone unless you specifically have something to add, to say. I will give a very brief one-sentence report about planning board, and that is that at the upcoming town meeting, the planning board will not have rendered an opinion one way or the other on whether or not the zone change article on the warrant regarding two properties side by side. I never remember the numbers. I think it's like 173 and 175 College Highway is on the warrant for a zone change. And the public hearing was held, but due to the tie vote on behalf of the planning board, there will be no position of support or non-support. And that was resulting from a legal opinion. So that's all I have to say on that. Anyone else want to report on any of their committees, Concom, assessors, that would be important to have on this report tonight?
I wasn't at the Concom meeting, but they did vote to approve awarding the contract to Kane Industries, I think, of Southwick. Marla and I walked the Manhan Meadows with them. I should have said the Manhan Meadows Mass Trails contract. We had walked with him and Ed Gibson, the principal of the company, and we were impressed. And, we had reservations at first that they weren't qualified, but we think they are. And so they voted. And the next thing is for Ed to, finalize the contract with them. So yay.
Any idea when it would start once it's finalized? Pretty much immediately?
There's more, the notice of intent stuff, that stuff has to go on. It's almost done, I think.
Okay.
That's wetland stuff and all that.
Great. Okay. April, do you have
I have a question there, if I may.
Sure.
Is the reason that Conservation Works did not participate in that bidding was because there was a bond required over $50,000 and they don't have bond insurance?
It had something to do with the bonding. The contract was for $50,000, from the contract has to go out to this process whenever it's over $50,000. So that's true.
Yeah.
That's not exactly what the contract was for, but it was over $50,000. I don't know. I think that they had to put up a bond that's just a portion of that, a fraction of that, but they had some internal issue, talked to a couple of people, and they just weren't comfortable with it. They don't, even though apparently they've done it before, it kind of came to a boil, they said, to quote them, with this project, and they did not bid on it. So yeah, we were really disappointed, but.
Yeah, that's something that disappointed me, because in my tenure on the Conservation Commission, I know I've been out there 3 or 4 times with Conservation Works, and I'm not sure how many additional trips they've gone out with Marla as chair. but they seem knowledgeable and committed. And I was disappointed, as apparently a number of people were, that they didn't commit to doing that. And if there was, I thought maybe the obstacle was they did not have the appropriate insurance. And as a private citizen, I wouldn't mind paying for all that insurance if they would bid on it, you know, because I know those people from 10 years back.
Right.
And they're good people, you know.
Well, it was, disconcerting for everybody because they only let us know the night before the thing was deadline that they weren't going to bid. And they helped us write the grant. We paid them $1,000 to go out and help us write the grant. And so they knew exactly what needed to be done. I don't understand why at the last minute they backed out. That was really,
Okay. All right.
But everybody is satisfied now with this company, other company that's bidding from wherever they come from?
Southwick. Yeah, we're hopeful. We're hopeful. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Just because we have time here to watch. April, is there anything from assessors that you wanted to add at all?
Not really that affects open space, except that we did have a talk about whether or not the zoning change on those two parcels on College Highway would, if they went commercial, would that increase tax revenue? So it's, unless we actually know what's going to be built there, it would be really hard to guess. If it's a commercial building, some members of the board felt that the value would be higher than if it were single-family homes. And if the business, whatever the business is, if they had, receipts or things like that, it might help with tax revenue, but it's very hard to know whether or not that would be the case without knowing what would be built there. So.
Okay. And just to add to that, at the second public hearing, they offered absolutely no clear plan of what they would build there. And they even stated they might sell the property. So there's no understanding of what's there. That's right. Okay. Thanks on that, April. CPC, Janet, there's a bunch of stuff coming up on the warrant for CPC.
Yes, but we haven't had a meeting since our last open space meeting. Virginia hopes we'll meet maybe sometime in June, but so there's really nothing to report.
Okay. Okay.
And there's a lot going on at the town meeting.
Right. And I asked just prior to the meeting, Charlie's all set to present the presentation regarding support from CPC and
Barnes Aquifer thing?
Yes.
Barnes Aquifer, great. Okay.
And I would like to request everyone's support I'll be presenting for Article 41, the Mass Trails Phase 2 project, which is the bridge. So I hope, people will support that. It's the request, I think, 50,000 from the CPC. Okay.
Great. So that's good. That means come early and stay late.
Yeah.
That's what it means. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Any other reports from anybody that anyone wants to add? We don't have anybody from Select Board here tonight. Okay. Or Parks. Moving on then. I did have on here Pollinator Garden. There was a lot of activity early on, but we're kind of in a halt mode right now, aren't we?
Well, you guys are, but I'm not.
Okay, good. Great.
I've talked to my friend at Look Park for a design, and I'm keep trying to simplify it because he's a sophisticated designer. And basically, there's a number of basic questions about how far from the road you want it, what kind of a pathway into an area that has the garden. And he in particular stressed that if you have a garden, you really need a bench.
Okay.
And that would make it an attractive area to sit down and whatever display we have for information on signs for the educational aspect of this would be more effective if we had a bench there. Now, I've also, he has some good ideas about the bench, but it's fairly expensive, and he's convinced me to put a metal bench there on a cement slab. You need a cement slab if it's in a public area so it doesn't get heisted, you know, and that's an issue. And we have to talk about the design. You'll come up with a figure. You know, we're trying to keep it less than $1,000. And where that money is coming from is an issue. Outside of that, the bench and the cement slab, I guess I volunteered talking to him that I'll dump that on my LLC, and that'll be some cost, but it'll be advantageous for the purpose of this garden.
Wow, okay. So
Okay.
that's design and the bench, but then we still have to get the flowers and we have to get the
Oh,
labor.
yeah. We'll get some boulders. I think I have enough boulders. I grow boulders on this property to have a lifted garden with good topsoil as well as 3 inches of mulch. And we need to have perennial butterfly or pollinator plants rather than annual, and just to keep the maintenance low. And likely the bench will be metal on a cement slab. And that's required because, I mean, even, you know, Glenn Leonard and Christina Matson, they had an ATV on their property that was taken away. You know, they stole it from them. And that happened about a few years ago. And the only reason I know about it because the police came and they were looking over suspicious characters in the neighborhood, which I happened to be across the street from. So they came looking for the ATV. But anyway, those kinds of things happen. If you go to Tractor Supply, if you have any heavy duty equipment outside, they typically will have it chained.
Yeah.
So a metal bench on a cement slab, and having a bench to begin with, we have to say that is something that we all agree to is a good deal. And the other thing is, where do we want to put it? You know, we talked, I think, around the school, on the Pomeroy Meadow property, as well as I think the site around the town hall next to the church would be another good site, you know, on town hall property next to the church. That way they'll have enough traffic, at least on Sundays, to get that information that we're emphasizing in this garden out to the public, as well as the pedestrians on Pomeroy Meadow, as well as the students around around the school. So anyway, next meeting, I will have a simplified diagram. We have to have a walkway in. Do you want flagstones, or do you want a bed that has gravel on it? And going in versus 100 square feet, 100 square feet, this is small. A garden with maybe 2, 3, 4 plants, plus some signage. Those are the ideas that I've been kicking around with my expert. That's all.
So, wow, you've done a lot of work. That's great. I think it's super. So you're actually moving away from the idea of just having it on the Pomeroy Meadow over the Water Commission open space there.
Yeah, I guess we have to have a vote based on the various locations mentioned, the church or the school or Pomeroy Meadow. Where do we think collectively is the best place? Well, and also away from the road, how far do you want to go in? 10 feet with a bench as well as a relatively small garden? Right. That means going in, you need some sort of a pathway, especially for seniors, such as myself, that they, if they need to go in a wheelchair or something like that, with a bench, that would be cool. That's a fundamental sort of orientation I have, as distinct from all these 700 acres we have for, on the Conservation Commission, I think we should have some urban areas where the residents sit down and enjoy the outdoors.
Sure. Okay. So for the next meeting, then we'll kind of be looking at a little more.
All those
specifics on the
questions
design.
have to be addressed and voted on in the next meeting.
All right.
And I'll bring a design. You might get a PDF or something prior to that, so you can have your input. Again, the size, the walk-in, the bench, that kind of stuff. Those are things we have to address.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Next meeting then. Okay, great. So the next thing on the agenda is, which I failed to post, I'm sorry, was the Celebrate Southampton, which
Yep.
is August 14th. And did you go to that meeting on Tuesday, Charlie? Because
I did. That was
Great.
interesting because I haven't participated. I talked to Tammy, and what I learned, and I'm coming in out of the wilderness here, we're going to need a table and some chairs. And what are we going to have on that table? I assume we'll have some form of the Bonds Aquifer pamphlet, hopefully printed up and designed and approved by everybody. And we probably need, both from the Open Space Committee as well as the Friends, some simple verbiage, one page, that people say, what can answer the question, what are we doing? What is our purpose? And again, it's not the mandate from the town, from the select board, but a very simple description of what we're doing. I have a number of things I found on the internet about how to address handling your estate. I think you're well familiar with it, Cindy, but I have copies of it. I can print them out. We can have that on the table. And maybe if we all agree on something associated with this Pollinator Garden or Monarch Garden, we could have an example of the design and, see what we need as far as support. CPC may be available for some of it, but that has to go through their committee. And we may have to maybe be supplicants to anybody who comes to our table and suggest they make contributions.
Well, I was going to say, we can't expect CPC money because that has to go to town meeting, not just their committee.
Yeah.
And that will not happen, obviously, because it's not going to be before this town meeting. So we can't expect money there. And we can't,
we're not gonna do
but
this.
we don't have any money. We don't even have an account. So we can't take money. However, Friends of Southampton Open Space are meeting tonight, and they have on their agenda to discuss Celebrate Southampton.
Good.
And I suggested that we do exactly what you're saying, which is share a table or, share a space.
Yeah.
So I'm not able to go to that meeting because it's at 8:00. And so we'll see what comes out of that. But perhaps Charlie, you and I can coordinate with those people. And
Absolutely.
help.
I'd be interested in doing that. Yep.
I do have a very large table that I could offer. What I cannot offer is any human assistance because we won't be here. But I have a table that's very big, and heavy and wonderful. I have chairs, I have all that stuff, but we'd have to find some volunteers to help move all that stuff. I don't know if Dan LaValle might help a little bit or somebody like that. We'll have to ask.
Yeah, I would expect we should have coordination with the Conservation Commission there.
Well,
So Dan and I, maybe we can handle that together.
okay, that'd be great because you'll have to ask Marla, but I'm not sure that the Conservation Commission specifically is interested in participating in this. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at it's 10 more minutes of this meeting, but thank you. We'll work together on that. I just want to say that the final report of of the neighborhood outreach program went in, and it's completed. I think I forwarded it all to all of you, so,
Yes.
that's the end of that. But there's still more work to do, and it's specific to the follow-up with some of the landowners, some who attended and some who did not. In fact, last week, a landowner of several large parcels, it's on map 40, and his primary parcel is parcel 12 and parcel 11A, and he has more than that. Because he contacted us, I'm going to go ahead and say his name. It's, he contacted Open Space and wanted someone to meet with him. Charlie Touchette on Middle Road. Some of you may have driven by his property. It has, across the street from the old house where he and his siblings all grew up, is a very large open meadow, which includes a man-made pond and wonderful donkeys and Scottish cows. Does everybody know where I'm talking about?
No, what's his last name? How do you spell it?
Touchette, T as in Tom, OUCHETTE.
GTE.
And he's very pro conservation and open space. He was, in fact, chairperson of, golly, I'm not going to say the right thing. He was on one of the important committees earlier in several years ago, possibly zoning board of appeals, one of those committees. I apologize for not remembering. He is aware that while the town and our committee are eager to support open space initiatives, we are missing one element, and that is, how does a landowner who has got a large parcel of land, who wants to conserve it, but is having a lot of aggressive mail and phone calls, et cetera, from developers in our town and developers out of town, saying, sell us your land because it's got tremendous development opportunity. And he told me that he gets, on the average, 2 pieces of mail, rather aggressive mail, every week to do exactly that. And he's not interested in selling it. But what happens with a landowner that needs to do something to have an income from that land, such as, this isn't exactly what he wants, but such as a small ice cream stand or flowers or something like that. It's not zoned for any kind of retail space. So there would have to be a variance or something. So he raised this as a concern that our town it hasn't been easy for certain landowners to do that. I suppose that means that we have in other places in our town, and I'm thinking of right up the street from me, White House Farm on Glendale or right off Glendale, they have a business. They sell plants. They sell vegetables. They must be grandfathered in to allow that. April, do you have anything to say about this and how this might work, in your assessor's opinion?
Not on the zoning piece of it, but I thought that some of the EPR regulations and maybe even Chapter 61A would allow farming, seasonal farming activities for income producing situations. I mean, how did the Fletchers have that?
Yeah, the Fletchers have it. Their APR.
Is it strictly under the APR, or do they have some kind of grandfathered variance to?
I don't know. I'd have to read. I mean, the APRs are different for each piece of land, but I have to read the language.
Okay. Well, he's just put the thought in my head, but more importantly, he told me, especially, and you know this, April, very well, in this very hot real estate market right now, that, development is pumped up, and people developers want land so they can build on it because they know they can sell houses right now. So he's getting a lot of mail, he said, from people all over the place. So he just kind of opened my eyes to that. He did ask for information about one of our speakers, Elizabeth Roblico, who is from Conservation Works. She's the conservation expert who is also an attorney, and I've connected them. So at least, she can hopefully have a private, meeting with him about what his goals are.
Right. I mean, if there were a bylaw in Southampton that allowed, a seasonal income producing situation on protected lands, conserved lands, I think that might be a possibility. Special permit.
Have you ever heard of that in any other community?
No, but I mean, it certainly wouldn't, it makes smart sense if we're going to try to help our farming community and maintain our agricultural presence.
Well, you can certainly profit from the timber on a Chapter 61 land. So,
right.
The precedent is there.
Right.
Maybe I can do a little research around that just to find about like communities like Hadley or Amherst or, the hill towns or something, if they have any kinds of bylaws like that. So I'm reporting on that contact with him.
Right. I mean, in the assessor office for Chapter 61A, in order to get your annual renewal on your tax break for the land, you have to prove, I don't know whether it's $400 or $500 worth of income from crops or whatever, hay, whatever's been produced on that land from the past year, so that you can show that it's still in agricultural use. Now, if Charlie's talking about building a stand and selling stuff from the stand that he's growing, that's a bigger conversation. But it is something. I know Chris Fowles brought that up at the assessor meeting.
Yeah.
About zoning and questions and this stuff. So she may have had a conversation with Charlie too.
She was with me. We were together that day. I will say, I don't think Charlie personally is looking to build a stand, because he actually is in a bit of a transition, in a personal transition in his life. He just remarried and moved to Virginia for part of the time. But I think he just raised it as an issue for our town to be aware of, that's, in his opinion, something to be aware of because of this aggressive attempt to have people sell their land to developers.
Right. I mean, Bashista would be one on Pleasant Street. I don't think his land is protected. In terms of APR or conservation restrictions. So I can imagine that there is some pretty heavy duty assault on large landowners with particularly nice property with views.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So is there any other business that we need to bring up tonight? Because we are at 6:30, which is because I did want to go into this Kestrel presentation, because they're going to be talking about Clearwater Woodland tonight on this presentation. I know Janet's planning to do it. If there's no other business, our next meeting could be, let's see here. How about either the 8th or the 15th of July? Is there anybody one way or the other? I think we were trying to do it on the first Thursday, right? Do we want to do it on the 1st of July? Let's try for the 1st of July. Has everybody got that available on their calendar?
That's pretty close to the 4th. Are people going out of town or anything?
We're not.
I'm not. Just what I read.
Let's just shoot for the 1st of July, shall we?
That's good.
Okay, so 6 o'clock, and maybe if it's possible, we can do Kona Park that night. Let me look into how that would work with the change in rules as far as meetings and what might occur. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, very good. So 6:30. Thank you, everybody. That was easy.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Off the town meeting. Goodbye.